Ibre, why do we call bread with sausage a hot dog? Where did that come from? I have to admit I was even afraid to look up that answer because who knows what part of the dog it comes from. Save it for last. That answer is really cool and there are other amazing ones in this video too. Stick around until the end, I promise it's worth it. Did bubble wrap really start as something other than packaging for fragile items? It's true, I only learned about this story because of the question. I had no idea before. In 1957, two engineers from the United States wanted to create a textured wallpaper, a wallpaper with some relief. And they had the brilliant idea of gluing two plastic shower curtains together, but leaving a bit of air inside. Do you know what the result was? It was terrible, it was useless, and it looked awful. But they thought there was some potential there, and they kept experimenting with this kind of material that trapped air inside. A few years later, International Business Machines launched a computer called the 1401, which was meant to popularize this machine. Before then, computers existed only in research centers and large companies testing them. This 1401 was meant for small businesses. When I say that, I don't mean it was a laptop, okay? It was like a collection of several giant appliances like an industrial kitchen, this computer, okay? And of course there was a transportation issue because they were fragile machines. They needed to be packed with a lot of care. The two engineers pulled it off. They sold International Business Machines bubble wrap as a solution. Back then, International Business Machines was like today's Apple. Getting a contract with them was incredible. It was amazing. And then bubble wrap took off, right? I mean, bubble wrap really took off. Anyway, do you get it? If water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, how does it evaporate in the bathroom if it doesn't reach that temperature there? You're right. And this question comes up here all the time. It's true. Bathroom water never reaches 100 degrees Celsius. You'd come out cooked from the shower, so it's probably around 40. If it hits that, you already feel uncomfortable because it's too hot. Boiling is when you put water in a really hot place, like on the stove or a hot plate. After some time, it will reach 100 degrees Celsius, start bubbling, and then turn into gas. Actually, we've already recorded a really cool video showing that if you go to a higher place, the atmospheric pressure is lower and the water boils at a lower temperature. We climbed a mountain in Campos do Jordão, a very high place, and the water boiled at about 93 or 94 degrees Celsius. It was really cool. Evaporating is something else. It's when water slowly goes from the liquid state to the gaseous state. When you hang clothes on the clothesline, for example, sometimes it doesn't even reach 30 degrees and they dry. If you spill a glass of water on the floor, leave and come back a week later, it's gone, it evaporated. How is that possible if it doesn't reach 100 degrees Celsius? Let's think of water as a soup of H2O molecules. Some molecules have a little more energy and they heat up. They naturally escape from the liquid and turn into gas. A few factors can speed up the escape of these molecules. First, by the surface of the water. The larger the surface, the more contact with the air, the more this will happen. So if you bunch up wet clothes, it will be very hard for them to dry. If you spread the clothes out, they dry easily. Second is when more airflow makes water evaporate faster. Third, and obviously, is heat. The hotter it gets, the faster water evaporates. Consider the shower. Many droplets fall, creating a large surface area. The water is in a lot of contact with the air. Wind occurs because the droplet falls from above, brushing against the air until it hits the ground. And you have a high temperature. Is it warm for you to take a shower? So all of this really favors the evaporation of water. And then that little steam you see is actually already droplets of water that have evaporated and have already liquefied again. They've returned to liquid form. Do you see those tiny droplets in the air? Ibere, where does the versary and anniversary come from? I imagine that Annie comes from year. That's right, Annie comes from year. And versary is like verses that are recited when we sing. Happy birthday, wishing you happiness and many more years. It comes from the Latin versus or verteris, meaning to turn or go back. So, a birthday is something that comes back every year, that happens every year. But I'm going to take advantage of this question because what I think is really cool about this series, Ibre Answers, is that you ask me a question and I come back with a little more than what you asked. That's where the magic happens, which is why this might be my favorite video to record on Manual do Mundo. In English, we use the word anniversary. Even if you don't speak English, you can understand it instantly. But you can't use that for a person's birthday. You use it for a company's anniversary, the anniversary of Brazil's discovery, the anniversary of Corinthians winning the world championship, even the anniversary of someone's passing. But when you're talking about a person's anniversary, you use the word birthday, which is the day of birth. I think it's cool because it's more specific. A birthday is only for a living being, not a company. Or for Corinthians World Cup title, which I already miss. Would saving the nails we cut throughout our whole life be useful for anything? Look, I think it's useful for one thing, which is to scare off someone who's into you when you don't want to be with that person. Think about it. Wow, your eyes are so beautiful. That's because you haven't seen my nail collection yet. Gravity pulls everything, including air, toward Earth's center. The higher we go, the less air there is. Tietjen, you're getting really clever, ma'am. You could already work at National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Yes, you're absolutely right. Gravity pulls the air down, and that's why we have atmospheric pressure. That's why the air puts pressure on us here, because of this weight, right? Air is more concentrated near the ground because there are more air molecules closer to the surface. As you go up, there's less air and it starts to disappear until there's a point where there's no more. This happens very gradually, okay? Well, you go up a little and start to feel short of breath. You go up a bit more and you can't even breathe anymore. Until satellites can orbit Earth without encountering any air at all. Going back to what I was saying, your questions are cool because they let us explore more than just the question itself. Does gravity make sure the air doesn't leave planet Earth? If we didn't have enough gravity, our atmosphere would go away and life couldn't exist here. So it's gravity that makes sure the air stays here close to us, that it doesn't disappear into space. Earth's magnetic field also helps protect our atmosphere. Our planet works like a giant magnet because of its metal core, which keeps moving down there. At the same time, the sun keeps releasing a bunch of particles which we call the solar wind. When these particles get close to Earth, the magnetic field deflects them. If there were no magnetic field, these particles would hit the atmosphere and start stripping pieces off it. Actually, that does happen, but so little that it doesn't really matter to us. Alan, a channel member, asks a question. Members always get a guaranteed question on eBay Responds. If gas balloons rise, inflate, and can eventually burst, why don't spaceships burst when they reach space? You're right, Alan. When we launched our balloon to the stratosphere, we knew it would fall because it would eventually burst. It inflates so much from low pressure that the inside pressure exceeds the outside, making it fall. Why doesn't this happen with spacecraft? They're more resistant than balloons and built not to burst. It's like flying inside a shell, like a gas cylinder that holds the air pressure inside. You need air pressure inside since people are there. Otherwise, you couldn't breathe in the spacecraft. So yes, the air inside wants to escape, and since there's no outside air creating pressure, a constant force pushes against the spacecraft walls, but they're designed to withstand it. One of the biggest risks is that any tiny hole in the spacecraft will be like a hole in a tire. The air starts leaking out, depressurizing the spacecraft, the air will start to escape. So if you're out there in space and, I don't know, a little screw from an old satellite punctures your spacecraft, you'll immediately lose pressure. This happens not only in spacecraft, but also in airplanes. When a plane climbs to about 10 kilometers, there's already much less air. The inside pressure of the plane exceeds the outside pressure. That's why people inside are pressurized. That's why we say the cabin is pressurized and all that. And yes, the fuselage of the plane, right? Its outer wall has to be strong enough to withstand that pressure. Why is zero used with plurals? Reais? Yeah, I think even I've said that at some point. Like, I have 0 reais. I went there 0 times, but the truth is we can't say that. I looked it up and the rule is this. You only use the plural when it's 2 or more. So I say I have 0 real, I have 0.5 real, I have 1 real, I have 1.5 real, I have 1.9 real. And I have 2 reais. I know that in everyday life we say 0 reais and joke about it. But that's informal language. When it's formal, exams, entrance tests follow the rule. Plural starts at 2. 1.999 is still singular. Mim is Diogenes. Mim, the way it's written here, I guess that's my name, right? Why use vowels anymore? Why use vowels? Let's just use consonants. You'll still understand. It's easier. It saves keystrokes and effort. As for the other person, it's called a microscope because it views tiny things. And the telescope, that word comes from Greek. Micro means small, scope means to look, to observe. So, the microscope is for observing small things, and the telescope is for observing, not television. Tele comes from Greek and means distant. A telescope is an instrument for observing distant objects. This tele appears in the names of other things like telephone. Phonos means voice, so a telephone is for hearing a distant voice. The telegraph is this small device here, which I bought at an auction. It's very old. Someday I need to make a video with it. You can send written messages with Morse code. Telegraph is writing at a distance. The word television here refers to a computer monitor, which still represents a television. It's a mix of Greek and Latin. Tele means distant, vision means sight. So you can see things that are far away here on the television screen, on the computer monitor, the television, and so on. With all the stuff we collect at Manual do Mundo, I think we deserve a like. Don't you agree? You could put a parachute on the rocket pieces and reuse them. I've said it several times on Manual do Mundo that when a rocket goes up, it drops pieces behind. This here is the Saturn V, the rocket that made it to the moon. While still in Earth's atmosphere, it released the first stage. This part would go away, fall into the sea, and be thrown out completely wasted. Then the second stage was also thrown away. And then, I'm not going to take everything apart, because it's a lot of work and it's already kind of broken. Anyway, this was back when rockets couldn't go in reverse yet. Wouldn't it have been easier to put a parachute here and save this part to use again? The connection here has already gone to space. It doesn't fit properly anymore. I mean, it's gone to space. Talking about rockets might be misleading and it doesn't really connect anymore. Yes, that's such a good idea. Such a great idea that National Aeronautics and Space Administration has already used it in another very important project, the Space Shuttle. It's not as large as the Saturn V, the rocket that went to the moon, since we printed it smaller. One day we'll have a full collection of spacecraft at a 1:100 scale. That's not a promise because it'd be a lot of work, but one day it'll happen. So how does it work here? The spacecraft launches with the entire assembly. The large airplane on top is the Space Shuttle. People, equipment, everything goes inside. It may be the coolest, most beautiful and comfortable spacecraft ever built, but sadly, it no longer flies. When it's about to take off, it uses all this, including a huge fuel tank and 2 side booster rockets. There came a point when these rockets were disconnected and fell back to Earth. And so they wouldn't crash to the ground since they couldn't go in reverse, parachutes would open, and they could be found and reused. And with that, I can say for sure that if the world ended, only Manual do Mundo subscribers could rebuild it. These ideas are great, but they've already been done. How far has man traveled into space? Yeah, we actually haven't gone very far. The astronauts who went farthest were the ones who traveled to the moon on that rocket, the Saturn V, back in the late 60s and early 70s. Of all the trips made to the moon, the one where astronauts got farthest from Earth was Apollo 13, which is the one where they didn't manage to land. That spacecraft had issues. There's a great movie, Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks, which won several awards. To be able to return without landing on the moon, they used the moon's gravity to help the return trip. And during the loop they made around the moon, they reached the farthest distance any human has been from Earth, 400,000 kilometers. That's slightly farther than the 384,000 kilometers from Earth to the moon. But of course we have robots that have gone much farther. The one that went farthest of all is this one here, Voyager. It's a probe, right? A spacecraft full of sensors and cameras that we sent to study the outermost planets. From Jupiter onward. But we recorded a whole video just about it. I won't tell everything now. I don't even know if this video came out before or after the other one, but anyway, we just made a video about Voyager. That's why I have its print here. It turned out really cute. In fact, this spacecraft has a message for aliens, and I'm being serious. Why do highways sometimes have curves when you could just make a straight road? Ah, Miguel, if only the world were that simple. Let's think how highways came to be. In general, they were paths someone made many years ago, maybe centuries ago. Paths people used to walk, then cattle passed, then horses, and over time cars started using them. Eventually they were paved. And you can't really change the layout of something that's been there for so long, because all the land follows that path. The neighborhoods, businesses, cities, everything is based on those old paths. But that's fine. You might say, let's pay people, buy the land, and adjust things to make straighter roads. Yes, you can do that. The thing is, the mountains aren't straight either. They're all crooked. If you want to keep the road at the same level, you'll have to build a lot of tunnels, bridges, and cut through a lot of hillsides. You must cut through mountains to build these roads. And yes, the most modern highways like Castelo Branco, Bandeirantes, or Tamoios here in São Paulo, they go down the mountain and are newer highways that descend the Serra do Mar here in São Paulo. All of them have bridges, tunnels, cut mountains, retaining walls, and so on. That makes them much straighter than older highways, like this one. We're near Raposo Tavares, which is a very old highway. The route is old and very winding. Ibre, is it true that the toy dinosaur was made with a real dinosaur? I've wondered that too, and I asked a scientist at Petrobras Research and Innovation Center in a video we made there. I'm going to include his answer here because it's really interesting. Could this dinosaur once have been real too? No.
In the pre-salt case, that's not true. We need to consider how pre-salt rocks were formed. In the environment of a large lake with many microorganisms living there, oil comes from this accumulation of microorganisms at the bottom of that lake. Bacteria, algae that pile up, forming a kind of sludge, a swamp there at the bottom of the lake.
Over millions of years, this accumulates, eventually generating the oil produced in the pre-salt layer. What are the holes on the moon? Could they be meteors that fell there? Yes, all kinds of things have fallen there. Meteors, comets, asteroids, but a big difference between the moon and Earth is that these also fall on Earth, especially during its formation. First, we have an atmosphere. When something the size of a grain of rice hits Earth's atmosphere, it burns up. Strong air resistance heats it and turns it into dust. Also, craters formed on Earth get worn down by rain, wind, animals walking, and plants growing. We have very few craters that we can actually see on our planet. One is in São Paulo, and we've been there. I even made a special video about it. It's called the Colonia Crater. Check the video if you haven't seen it. We also have volcanoes here, which existed on the moon long ago, but don't anymore. When a new volcano forms in the ocean, it releases lava, ash, and other things. It keeps covering and changing the landscape, and we still have moving tectonic plates. One continent slips beneath another, causing landforms from the old continent to disappear. The moon doesn't have anything like that, so anything landing on its dust leaves a mark. It forms tiny craters, mini craters, and even gigantic craters. And again, it wasn't what you asked, but I think it's really cool to answer. I went to research what the biggest crater on the moon is. It's gigantic, and we can't see it from Earth because it's on the far side, the side not facing our planet. So it was only seen recently decades ago when we were able to send a spacecraft to photograph that side. It's called the South Pole Aitken Basin because it starts at the South Pole and ends at another crater called Aitken. It's 2,500 kilometers in diameter. Just so you have an idea, that's the distance from São Paulo to Manaus. This dark area in the photo isn't a perfect crater because several other craters formed on top of it. Several other things also happened there, but in terms of area, it's about half the size of Brazil's territory. It's a huge crater. You guys keep asking questions about space, and I'll tell you, I'm picking the ones I think are the coolest and that I can answer well. Since the topic keeps coming up. Iberê, what are the requirements to become president of Brazil? Next year is election year. Maybe I could run for president of Brazil. I don't know if it would be a good idea. I should probably stick with what I'm doing, but let's see if I meet the requirements to run for president. First, have a clean record. No court issues or impediments. There are no lawsuits. So far, so good. Be a natural-born Brazilian, since the position of president is reserved for that. Yes, I was born in Sorocaba, 70 kilometers from São Paulo, and I am Brazilian. Be at least 35 years old by the date of inauguration, by 2027. When that happens, I'll already be 45. I'm 43 now, but by then I'll be 45. Be a registered voter with electoral residence in Brazil. Yes, my voter registration is regular and I live in São Paulo, so all is well. Be literate. Great, I'm reading these questions because I can read what's on my phone screen. Not replacing the current president within 6 months before the election. I'm not VP, a Supreme Court Justice, President of Congress, or anything like that. And the last point is being affiliated with a political party. In Brazil, you have to run through a party, and I'm not affiliated with any, so I couldn't run for the presidency of Brazil. E Gustavo Hardim, how can I create a homemade experiment to demonstrate the surface tension of water? Surface tension is like a kind of film that forms on top of water. If you look closely at a small pond with a lot of little creatures, you'll see insects or spiders. They can even walk on water, even though they're denser than water. Leaves also float. If you put your finger in, you'll notice there's resistance from the water when you try to push it in. This happens because water molecules are attracted to each other. It's as if they're a bunch of tiny magnets all stuck together. To fit something between them, you have to separate those tiny magnets, which isn't easy. You need to break the surface tension of the water. But let's go. I've missed doing experiments here on Manual do Mundo. What can you do to show surface tension? Happening right there in front of people visiting your science fair? You'll need a coin. I'm using a 25-cent coin here, some water, and a dropper. That's it. Then you challenge people to see how many drops they can place on top of the coin. Make a bet with them. They'll guess something like 15 or 10. I'm already at 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 26, 27, 28. Notice a water bubble forming on the coin. It hasn't run off because of surface tension, the force that holds water molecules together. They don't want to separate. And I've already dropped 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. The bubble is coming off the coin now. 37, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43 drops. It's an experiment, a challenge, and a game. Great for the science fair. But wait. Now, let's try to make metal float on water. I have a 1965 10 Cruzeiros aluminum coin in my hand. It's not very common, but Brazil produced aluminum coins. Other countries did too. I think Japan still has them. If you place it directly on water, the coin sinks. I won't do that now since it's a hassle to get it back from the bottom. And the water in the glass would spill out. So how do you place the coin carefully? Put a small piece of toilet paper under it with the coin on top. I'll do it and record so you can see it happening right here. Place the paper on the water, then put the coin on top and let it go. Didn't have time. I think this glass is too small. The hard part is using both hands, paper and coin, because you run out of hands. And now it didn't work. I think this Brazilian coin is too heavy. I don't think it's gonna work. Since we couldn't do it with aluminum, let's try with steel. But instead of a coin, you'll need a needle. Which, by the way, is much easier to find than an aluminum coin. Honestly, aluminum coins are pretty outdated. If you actually want to go ahead and make a compass right away, you take the needle and rub it over a magnet always in the same direction. This will magnetize the needle, turning it into a magnet and creating a compass. The needle, just like the coin, is hard to place in the glass. So once again, I'll use toilet paper. Not sure if this glass is too small, the mouth seems narrow. Let's see if it works. It's a small paper cradle with a needle. The paper sinks and the needle stays. That's the idea. Oh no, the needle sank. This glass is too big and won't work. Let's use a bigger one. I'm sure it's the glass since I've done this often. Now I have a dessert cup with a wider surface. I think it'll be easier. Let's put it again. I place the paper down and set the needle on top. Use something like a skewer stick to push the paper down. It will sink since paper is denser than water. Let it go, see? The needle floats due to surface tension. The question is this needle aligned to the Earth's magnetic field? Is it working as a compass? Let's get a compass and compare. It's not really, right? Maybe I didn't magnetize the needle enough, or it's on top of iron. It's quite misaligned. Let's remagnetize the needle. Oh no, the magnet was underneath. It was nearby, which you can't have. Now it's good. Even far away, it still influences. I think this steel underneath does too. Now it's good, no steel. Close to north-south, north-south. The needle and compass are aligned. It's working as a compass and proving surface tension. I'm still not happy since the coin sank. Now I want to try making it float. Here's a 2 Cruzeiros aluminum coin. It's a little bigger. I think it has a larger surface area. Let's see. Here, aluminum floating on water. It's not easy, but it works. The wildest part? Even a tiny drop of soap makes the coin sink. Watch. Soap breaks surface tension as water bonds with soap molecules too. Did you notice how fast it happens? Drop the soap and the coin goes straight down. Gustavo, 3 cool experiments to do. 2 of them, the easiest, have a double meaning. Very cool. Thailand Savio, why are there those fans inside road tunnels? That question seems obvious. A fan ventilates the tunnel. But why do we need to ventilate the tunnel? If you don't put a fan, pollution from the cars will keep accumulating inside the tunnel. It gets trapped in there and the air becomes unbreathable. It gets terrible. And maybe you might say, but Iberé, when the car goes in, doesn't it have that piston effect? Doesn't it push the air and keep it moving? Doesn't that already provide ventilation? Isn't the car enough to ventilate the tunnel depending on the size? It could be. The thing is, there could be a traffic jam in the tunnel, and when that happens, that's when it really gets polluted, even with no cars moving. So the fan removes the air and refreshes it inside. And more, if there's a fire, it also removes the smoke. Imagine if, in the middle of a traffic jam, a car catches fire inside the tunnel, people would die from suffocation. So if you have ventilation and airflow, that won't happen. Arthur Vinicius, how did you guys get a personalized license plate? Arthur, you probably watched the video where we use a vacuum cleaner to lift the car. That video is really cool. We made a giant cushion under the car and then the car kind of floats on top of it. It's wild. If you haven't seen it, check it out. You can use a personalized plate. Yeah, and all within the law. This only applies to new cars. You can't change the plate of an existing car, okay? So if you're getting a brand new car, you can go to the Department of Motor Vehicles, pay a fee, and choose your plate. Now these new Mercosur plates, they have 4 letters and 3 numbers. You can choose any combination of those. You can't change that. I couldn't find out either if you need to follow state rules. Some states require certain letters and so on. I'll admit, every DMV website I saw was worse than the last. DMV, please. This is a service for citizens. Make a user-friendly site where info is easy to find. I ended up finding everything elsewhere except on the DMV. But criticism made, you go there, pick and customize your license plate how you like, but no swear words or brand names allowed. That might already be an issue for Manuel do Mundo, but there's an even bigger one I hadn't thought of. I only realized it after reading those articles. If you can never change the plate again, you'll have to sell the car with that personalized plate. If I put Manuel do Mundo on the plate, I'll have to sell the car with that written on it. And that might be a problem when it's time to sell. First, people might not want to buy it. And second, they'll be driving around with a Manuel do Mundo plate. Well, Arthur, it looks like you noticed this plate here isn't real because it doesn't have 7 characters and no numbers. We made a plate to cover the car's real license plate during filming so it wouldn't show. It's actually the wrong size based on the old grey plate, which was smaller. When we put it on, you can still see the edge of the real plate and we secure it with elastic bands. It's rough, we can't drive on the road with it, okay? When filming on the road, we remove this plate or make sure it's not visible. And here's an Easter egg. The QR code works. Where do you think it goes? But let's get to the question that opened the video, the top question of the galaxies. Why do we call bread with sausage a hot dog? What does the poor animal have to do with it? First, remember this word isn't Brazilian, okay? We adopted it from English hot dog, which means the same thing. In Spanish, some countries call it perro caliente. And in French, there are places that call it something like chien chaud. I think that's how you say it. It's written down here. There's no story we can trust 100%. Where did the name originate? Still, some things are certain. This sandwich appeared in the United States and was made by German immigrants. Germans who immigrated there in the 19th century, we know the Germans brought that long little dog to the United States. It's hard to say, I think it's pronounced Dachshund or something similar. So what do we call this cute dog? In Brazil, we call it a sausage dog, and in the United States back then, the sausage was made Frankfurt style from Dachshund, a German city. In Brazil, we name the dog after the sausage. There they name the sausage after the dog. So a sausage dog. Now imagine someone selling bread with that sausage in the US. Come eat this bread, sausage. Hot dog, sausage, hot dog. Of many stories, one says in 1901 a cartoonist drew a stand selling the sandwich with the words hot dog. They say he wrote hot dog because he didn't know how to spell Dachshund. So instead of hot Dachshund, he wrote hot dog. This story is disputed since the original drawing was never found. Also, some researchers found that the term hot dog was already being used elsewhere before that date. Anyway, what seems most likely is that the sausage dog... The name hot dog comes from the dog resembling a sausage, let's be honest. There was a lot of cool stuff to learn in this video, even I didn't know some of it. I did a lot of research, so all of our sources are listed in the video description. If you're watching and not subscribed to Manual do Mundo yet, don't forget to subscribe and leave your question below. I work hard to find these questions. I select hundreds, then pick the best, study them. Some don't have answers, so they don't make it here. Anyway, I'm counting on your help. Deal? Big hug.